This is Simon transparently awakening the heart of humanity as we see beyond the lies and open our eyes to realize
this is our time to rise.
Welcome everybody to Simon Transparently, another podcast for your ears, or if you're watching this on video, we hope you enjoy today's conversation. And if you haven't already, I really have to invite you to go back to the previous conversation that I recorded with this magnificent being that you're about to meet today, Darpan. If you did listen to the first conversation, then to all my listeners, I would just invite you to go back and listen again. I know you might go, wow, Simon's super enthusiastic, but I listened again the other day and the transmission was palpable. I mean, if you've really been confused, worried, lost in the unknown over this last year of 2020 coming into 2021, then really I cannot tell you out of everything I've been listening to, what Darpan brought through in that first conversation is just medicine. So with that in mind, no expectations, but I welcome today this beautiful being, Darpan. Hey Darpan, welcome back to the show.
Oh, thanks for that lovely introduction, Simon. So lovely to be here with you again and with everyone else who's watching this. Yeah,
wonderful. So, wow, Darpan, what a year. I mean, I'm pretty certain everybody has been going through their own dance, their own, challenges. And, you mentioned in even the first conversation, and I may reference that at certain points today, but, that we're going through that transition, and this is a time for us all to look within, to mature up, to take responsibility. And we went on such a dance in that first conversation, and it led us into the playfulness. But I'd love to hear where you're at today, and also how maybe a little just reflection of the dance that's come into your way in the last few months, and then we'll see where it goes. I have a few points that I really want to touch on today that doesn't necessarily keep us where we were, but to maybe elaborate on some of the points you spoke about in the first conversation. I've got a few little notes. So, but yeah, just a little check-in. How's it been unfolding for you right now?
Wow, it's a roller coaster ride, isn't it? I mean, it's an internal roller coaster ride. For many people, it's external too, but where I live here in Byron Bay, it's pretty calm, pretty quiet. I'm not directly affected like so many people are that I read about, and all my friends and fellow travelers around the world are currently experiencing, and in parts of Australia as well. It's been quite extreme, the lockdowns and the regulations and the reordering of people's lives. But having said that, what's been interesting for me is just navigating the whole kind of script of what's been happening. I mean, it's what we're seeing today around so many issues, whether it's the virus or the lockdown or the medical approach to the lockdown or the vaccines and a host of other number of things like, if we can get into the World Economic Forum, talking about the Great Reset, the apparent implosion of the global economy that we're experiencing as we watch. All of this is stimulating so much, and that's without looking at the world stage with Iran and China and the relationship with the US and China, and that's a whole other ballgame as well. There are so many variables that are right on the trigger point of exploding in any direction that it's a really, really interesting time, because as we've been, going down this tunnel, the narratives on YouTube, on all the social media platforms, the people who are, espousing, the ones who are saying that there's a whole conspiracy or there's a kind of an agenda going on, and then there's the people who completely disavow that, who are still deeply into the race hypnosis, and watching the kind of debate that's going on with people, and seeing the polarization that's happening with a lot of people, even within people's families. And social groups. There's this polarization of, do you agree or not? And what's happening? I don't, ever comment on it, because for me, it's very much a play of identity, like because everything is being shaken up in our world, everything. People don't know quite who they are anymore, and so they start to have this the first impulse when they're hit by fear is to identify with their beliefs. And so you're either a vaxxer or an anti-vaxxer, or you're a pro the whole governmental lockdowns, or you're not. And there's this on-off switch. And so what I'm noticing is that at this stage of the journey, it's disorientation, it's alienation, it's a polarization, it's separation, it's divide and rule. It's like, don't let the left hand know what the right hand's doing, and keep everybody busy with a story that they're busy arguing about, so that really what's going on a meta level is not being noticed by anybody, because they're so taken in by the shadow play of the circus that's playing out in front of our very eyes. And the whole Trump thing, that was a perfect example in case. And like, to me, when I listen to all of that stuff, and I've been checking in quite a bit down the rabbit holes, and people send me stuff, confidants who I trust, and I go in there. But I've developed this attitude of, I don't believe or disbelieve anything I read at this time. I don't, if something happens to agree with my opinion, I don't necessarily believe it either. I think we're in a stage of chapel perilous on this journey, in this mystery school that we're collectively traversing. We're deep in the cave at this stage, and we don't know what's true and what's not true. And what we're trying to do is to, as things are shaken up and our sense of identity gets shaken and it's dissolving, people are clinging to anything to try and define or accentuate who they think they are. And beliefs is the very first arena within which people do this, so that people identify with beliefs. All real rational argument goes out the window, because people identify with their beliefs, so that if you happen to disagree, they take that as a personal attack upon them and get very angry if you speak your truth. And this is a really interesting phenomenon, because we were living in a land ostensibly, especially in America, the land of the brave and the free, freedom of choice, where people are allowed to have their points of view and allowed to express them publicly. And if you disagree, that's fine. But in a democratic society, that's allowed. Well, even liberal people who I know who are really intelligent, are really falling down with this one, where people are so uncertain and in that fear, in the grip of fear and kind of a dread and uncertainty about the future, not knowing what's going to happen. And even they're trying to keep a lid on it in a kind of an obvious, rational way. They start to behave in a very irrational way by, really attacking people who happen to disagree with them. Or, the whole mask issue is a great case in point, where people start to get very self-righteous and very defensive and very aggressive, actually, about, if you don't want to wear a mask, then you're a threat to society, And if you really look at the kind of scientific research upon that, that's absolutely not the case. And that's another thing. God has died. God doesn't exist, but the new God is science. Science says, this is what the science says. And it's almost like God says, this is what God says. And you hear it from the health ministers in every country. Science, we're following the science. And it's a way of, God doesn't wash with the people anymore, but now science does. So science is the new God. And they use science in the same way that they used to use the word God. And this is an interesting phenomenon too, because it's another example of people grasping for straws, trying to find some sort of solid ground, some sort of stability within all of this uncertainty. And in their attempt to do so, they regress into kind of a me and them, I, me, mine, service to self, look after number one kind of mentality. And that becomes expanded to anybody who's a little bit different from the herd consensus, gets vilified, gets ostracized, gets, completely debunked, and they get censored everywhere they try and speak. And this, I'm referring to, obviously very, very erudite people like doctors and PhDs and Nobel laureates who've been speaking clearly about this whole phenomenon, but have been censored on every platform, because the power of the technocracy is absolute at the moment in terms of controlling the narrative. Places like Parler are being taken down. Anything that's alternative to the mainstream social platforms are being, sabotaged. So this is an indication to me that we are deep in it right now. We're deep
Right.
in the womb. This is the part of the initiation where we absolutely have no idea what's going on, and we're about to stand. We're standing at the abyss and about to jump off, and or be pushed. And so it's a very, very interesting time. For me, it's not. I don't have any kind of agendas or beliefs. I can see clearly what's happening, but I can't judge it because one can't be fully aware of the divine plan. And I trust in the divine plan. What I mean by that is the the cycle, the cosmic cycle that we're coming towards, where there is before every birth, there is a death, and that we're going deeply into that place right now, and that it's very easy to freak out, and that's certainly the purpose of it in one way. But we've got to let go of that identity that wants to cling and hang on to who we thought we were, and absolutely have the trust in whatever way we can find to do that, to take that step into absolutely stepping into the unknown, and stepping into trust, and stepping into surrender. And I know that's going to be difficult for majority of the planet. It's certainly not on the cards for most people. And so I think that this whole virus thing is a big play for people to work out their karma, whatever your karma is. If there's still unresolved issues around power, around love, around security, now is the time when they're going to come up. Because a bit further down the track in this journey, this collective mystery school that we're in, those kind of energies are no longer, cannot come with you. They need to be dropped right now, and they can either be dropped willingly and gracefully, in which case all your stuff will come up very quickly, but you move through it very quickly, or you go kicking and screaming and clinging to the wall like a limpet, and and having a very, very intense and terrifying time of it. But that's not, without judging that is what's necessary for some people. I'm not saying that to be callous. I'm just saying that sometimes a feather can wake somebody up, and sometimes you need a Zen stick. And I think we're heading for some very big Zen sticks. I think it's funny because some people around me were going, "Oh, thank God 2020's over." And I said, well, hang on to your hat, let's see what 2021 brings, because I feel there are many more curved balls coming down the tunnel that will make the COVID story look like, a little blip, as Carl
Exactly.
Schwab puts it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Schwab. Don't get me
Yeah,
going on
Schwab.
Schwab.
I know. Well, that's what he said, because he was warning us, or maybe telling us, that the next pandemic will not be a virus. It'll be a cyber attack. Have you seen that talk that he's given on the World Economic
Yes.
Forum around that?
Yes. Yes.
Where
Yes.
he's virtually promising that there's a cyber attack coming, where the whole grid will go down for a period of time. The banks may collapse, the currencies will collapse. And he said that the economic fallout from an event like that will make COVID look like a little blip.
Right.
Honestly,
Exactly.
that would be the dissolution of the world economy. And that would
Right.
throw the world into a chaos, particularly if there was a power outage for the planet. I mean, no internet, no connection, no communication. People would really freak. So I'm not saying that's what's happening, but he's certainly posited that as a possibility.
Yeah.
And they all met in Davos last month on a virtual meeting, and all financial institutions around the planet, all of the luminaries, the corporations, the Prince Charleses, and all the leaders around the world to probably be briefed on what's coming next, I would
Right.
dare say, and pretty much about what he's talking about. Have you read The Fourth Industrial Revolution, or
No, I
about
never.
his?
I've only heard about this chap in obviously the last 6 or so months. So I know that there's been a whole let's say an orchestration that's been going on for probably over. I've read it as over 15, 20, 30 years. That this what we're going through at the moment in terms of maybe where they've also been wanting to shape society is now coming to a head as well. So it's so many, like you said, there's so many
Elements
mixed
in the mix.
narratives. Yeah, there's so many
Yeah.
mixed narratives that what I've done actually since also speaking to you in the last year, I've just been going, well, 10 years ago, I started to watch a whole heap of different documentaries and looking at the way society functioned, looking at the way the monetary system functioned, looking at the way the police system functioned, understanding that these are corporations, these are, we've, clearly been locked in and agreed into certain states of acquiescence that if you'd have given me a choice when I was younger, I would have probably said no to. And then, so when you start to look at like the birth certificate, you start to look at all these, I call them now actually imprisonment documents, these these indoctrinations. Then
The straw man.
yeah, the straw man. So what I'm seeing is right now is exactly what you speak about is, well, if we're in that unknown, which has always been unknown, and there's a divine playing out, for me, it's like if we stay, and you say it so beautiful, and I'm going to definitely reference some things today so we can dive in deeper for solutions, because people on the call, they can go on YouTube, they can hear all the dystopia glam, you can look at movies over the last sort of 20, 30 years and see dystopia everywhere, but the point is that if we tap into our sovereignty and we take full responsibility and prepare ourselves, as you so rightfully say, emotionally, mentally, spiritually and physically, then if we're going to prepare ourselves from that place, what are we willing to actually change, and what are we willing to step into as ambassadors of some very different narratives that maybe are not being so spoken about in the mainstream, and definitely not spoken about in these groups of beings that you just described. I don't think that Prince Charles is stepping up going, well, I'm definitely feeling that I'm connected to my four beings and my chakras are aligned, and right now I can see how we can really come together and support the whole of humanity, because the collective whole is what I'm interested in, and where we're evolving so we can be more, I'm going to reference you, but we can be more coexistent and in a co-creative environment as opposed to domination and exploitation. I mean, if Schwab and everybody in that are sitting down speaking about that for the collective, then I'm all open to the collective consciousness evolving at rapid rates.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'd love us to
I'm right with you.
Yeah, totally. So I'd love you to talk a little bit about actually, this radical transformation. And you say it so beautifully. And for everybody listening, if you haven't listened to Darpan's recent transmission, as I call them, called A New Vision, I can only say that that's been, again, my medicine in these last 7 months. I listen to it regularly. And if we're talking about radical transformation, what does that really look like? And maybe you want to just, does that feel like we can kick off there a little bit,
Yes. No,
Darpan?
lovely.
What does that look like?
Let's go with that. Yeah, because as you say, just to reiterate what you were saying, if the Schwab and the gang, the World Economic Forum and their cohorts were actually planning like a global government for the benefit of all beings and in service to the one and all, I'd be right there, right in it. He's saying, one of his memes is like, you'll own nothing, but you'll be happy. Well, that's great. I don't think there's the whole notion of ownership could be thrown out the window. I agree with that. But these people are privy to technology that is like 30 to 40 years in advance of what we know right now.
Exactly.
It's all there in the background, super secret, and they're ready to launch it with this whole new fourth industrial revolution that he talks about, the whole 5G/AI smart matrix and all the attendant, Internet of Things and all the rest of it. However, if it was that altruistic, I'd be right with it, because I don't think there's anything wrong with AI and the technology. I think technology is an evolutionary driver. It's actually, it's stretching us beyond ourselves, and I'm all for it. But I'm not all for just a cohort of a bunch of billionaires who decided they're the ones that are most worthy to steer or commandeer the fate of all of humanity. This I totally rebel against. This is completely off. If this wonderful technology, which is, they've had free energy for ages, but they've just been squeezing the petrochemical dollar to make the last possible dollars out of it before they introduce it. And this is in itself indicative of the service to self-consciousness that they espouse, that they embody. And this is the old paradigm. This is what's dying. And so these
Exactly.
people are aware that there's something moving, something moving. It's imperceptible right now, but they know
Right.
it's there and they know it's coming. And so they're working really hard, really fast. And you have to admire how efficient they are in laying down their agenda. It's incredible. They're very efficient. They've been planning it for a long time. But I still don't think that, consciousness is the wild card, the radical transformation of consciousness. And this is
Right.
something that cannot be controlled, no matter how many billions you've got, no matter how many armies you own, no matter, I think it was George Bernard Shaw who once said, no army in the world can stop an idea that comes into its own time.
Mm.
And I believe that the liberation of consciousness is an idea that is coming into its own time for a growing percentage of humans on this planet. Now, I know the majority are still fast asleep, but you only need critical mass. You only need 10 to 12% of people to be awake for the entire
Mm.
humanity. Just get it on the natch really quickly. So this is what we're all working towards. And so this is the where I see the real radical transformation is. And at the moment, we're being hypnotized, literally brought into a trance to focus through the media and through social platforming and all the censorship and everything else that's going on, controlling the narrative, as you rightly say. This is how they're holding the spell. This is how they're inducing the trance. And while people are focused on that, they can't see the bigger picture. And even if you suggest a bigger picture, people will rebel against it. Like, no, it's bullshit. No, it's like, the real key, I think, for people who are in the awakening stage, in the awakening process, who are starting to, even those who are just starting to sense that something's not quite right, doesn't feel right, but they don't really know where to go or what to put their energy in. So they're going along, they're acquiescing, but they're not really there. They're doing it because they don't want to be picked out or, identified or being seen as being against the herd reality.
Right.
So, but there are a lot of those people, a lot. I speak to them a lot, and without trying to convince them, I just notice that they're feeling it. And the next step is to really ask the questions that you and I have already, had the courage to ask, and many millions of people like us, and to come to certain conclusions. And then you go, well, what is the antidote? How do we get out of this dystopian knot that we're being kind of tiptoed into? And what can I do, little me? Who am I? How can I have an effect against this massive agenda?
Right.
And this is part of the hypnosis, that we are made to feel small, that we feel
Exactly.
disempowered, that we feel like we actually can't make a difference. This
Right.
is what the whole intent is intended by the narrative and by the whole drama that's being played out. But the truth is, it's just like in The Wizard of Oz. Do you remember when they were going along the yellow brick road and they finally get to the Oz and there's this big booming voice saying, whoa, and they're all like cowering, going, holy shit. And then one of them has the courage, I think it's the lion or maybe it's Dorothy, opens the curtain behind and they see this grizzly old man with a long beard, really weak and frail with a big megaphone. And the whole spell, the
Yeah.
illusion has come undone. And
Yeah.
this is what we do. People are, with the whole humanity is under a spell. And as I say, even intelligent people who I know to be intelligent are under this spell. And so what it has to be happening is a dispelling process, and that can only happen inside. This is not a revolution like in the past. It's not going to be fought by guns and war and, weapons and strategies and armies. The war is already happening. People say, when's the Third World War happening? It's happening right
It's
now. We
happening.
are in
Yeah.
it. Well,
Yeah.
lockdown is actually a wartime situation.
Of
That's why how
course it
people were
is.
in the Second World War, and not
Yes.
even as extreme as it has been here. So
This
we
is
are in a
house
war,
arrest.
and
This is
the
house
war is on.
arrest, right? This is house arrest
That's
right
right.
now.
Absolutely. That's it. In plain words, call a spade a spade. It's house arrest. And people, this war is a war on consciousness. It's not a war for land. It's not a war for territory. It's a war on consciousness, on the monopoly of human consciousness.
Yeah.
And
Let's let,
this
let,
is
let
part of the
let's let that
technocratic.
sink. Yeah. Let's let that sink for a minute, because I think this is so beautiful that you bring this up, because we hear this, and because this seems like, Darpan, such a far out woohoo thing, it's hard to really grasp. But the way you described the beginning about this, fear of losing our identification to the dense frequencies of matter, of identity, of persona, of me. Like when we see that is a frequency, we see it as a state of consciousness, right? That we've all been functioning in, and we move out of this matter perspective of thinking that a chair is a chair, a door is a door. I love what you just said there. This is a war on the consciousness of the multi-dimensional space that we can move into, right? That's what I just want us to just absorb that, because if people are listening can really let that sink in, that nobody can control your state of consciousness unless you let them, and that actually we have the capacity to go, wait there, I'm not feeding with my plasma, with my intention, with my creative energy. I'm not feeding that consciousness anymore. I do not feed it. Anyway, that's what's coming up. Continue, please, Darpan.
This is a revolutionary, what you're just describing there is a revolutionary act, but it's not a revolutionary political act. It's a revolutionary act in terms of your own consciousness, in terms of repositioning yourself into a point of empowerment to say, I have dominion over this sovereign being. I have dominion over that. Nobody can force me to do anything unless I agree or unless I acquiesce. Even if I don't agree and I do it, I'm acquiescing. We have this power to say simply no. We have this power to say, I do not consent. And that doesn't mean you have to be anti anything or angry at the government or angry at the vaxxers or anything like that. It just means, as you say, you simply cease giving it energy. The way I look at it is this: we create our reality moment by moment. On a very, I haven't got time to go into it right now, but I could present an argument that shows exactly how we do that, and that by taking responsibility for our current reality, we empower others to do the same. And that what happens then, if you completely surrender to your own power of dominion, instead of looking to the authority on the outside on how to live your life, then that is a very, very powerful step in self-empowerment. And once you take that, then you can simply exercise your right to not contribute your energy to that which doesn't support you or support the well-being of others. And the only way these people, like the wizard behind the curtain, can get away with this, because you're talking about a very small amount of people, like you could fit them in a room, in a house, who are exercising this. If everybody just simply became aware, like if what the whole story, if the spell was broken and transparency became clear, everybody would just see it. Like I always say, the higher the monkey climbs, the more he shows his ass. And more the monkey is showing his ass. And people are starting to see it. Then they have to have the courage to act. And this is where it becomes really important, where we can exercise our power, where we simply take back our right of dominion over ourselves. We simply come to a point of going, I am me. I'm a being inhabiting this vehicle, this body at this time. Existence chose me to be here. So I'm here by divine right, not by any political dispensation of any country or nation. And I am the child of the universe. And as such, from that authority, I speak and say, I have dominion over my own being, and no other shall exercise dominion over that. If you can come to that point, then you're really in a very powerful point. You simply say no. Say, I do not consent to that. If, for example, you don't want to have a vaccine, you say, no, it's not for me. And you don't attack them, you don't fight them, you don't argue, because then you fight the tar baby, you get stuck to it. You simply state your position clearly and without any too much emotion. And then what happens is that actually things start to fall away. If you actually have the courage to do that, there is very little that can happen. And particularly if you get a lot of people doing that, it's like a house of cards. The whole thing will simply fall down. But of course, people are under the spell of fear, or the spell is maintained and fueled by fear. And the spell is being, narrated daily on the mainstream media. And so this is what people can see. It's like a stage hypnotist. I studied hypnotherapy for years. And you can make people believe there's an elephant in the room when there's not. You can make people not see someone else in the room when they're there. You can make all kinds of adjustments to the perceptions of the eyes and or the five doors of the senses through hypnosis. And these beings know that. And of course, if you look at the daily news, it's just a tool of mass hypnosis. It's no longer the news. It's a propaganda device. It's absolutely using all the techniques of hypnosis. For example, even when you watch the news, you're being told something. Meanwhile, down below, there's a readout of something unrelated going on somewhere else in the world in the text. And of course, your mind can't help but read the text. So your left brain is being distracted whilst your right brain is completely open to receiving unadulterated, uncensored what is being told to you from the television. So that's a classic hypnotic trick. You distract,
and that goes straight in faster to the subconscious, right? Because
absolutely
your brain is open, so therefore the program is actually quicker. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So the first step is to take away, is to see the spell. That's the first step. The second step, that's already is to empower oneself as a sovereign being, and to just simply stop giving energy to that which is not supporting you and your family or your community. And the next, because the true revolution is within. It's within every person. No person on this planet who's part of this current drama can get away from having to face themselves and look at a very basic binary choice. And I might have mentioned this to you in one of our other interviews, and that is the choice between love and fear. And every person is being confronted with this now, daily, every day. And of course, most people are responding to the fear as if it's real and buying it. And so therefore, they're giving away their human rights, their values, their normal, all the things they've cherished in life as being good, true, and worthwhile. They're giving it up. Why? Because they're afraid. So we have to look at fear. And, we have to make this choice. Even if you're not making the choice and just going along, you're choosing. And that is fear to actually speak your truth. And so, it's a binary choice: fear, love, fear, love. And if you listen to your mind, you can be led astray, because the mind is a very tricky customer. It's not called the monkey mind for nothing. It can convince you that you're choosing love when you're actually still choosing fear. So we don't listen to the mind. That's why I say I don't believe or disbelieve anything I read or hear or feel. I just tune into my intuition, and whatever, if it resonates, if it rings a bell, what I'm reading, then I take it on board, but only by that measurement, not just because I'm reading it. And so the mind can't be trusted to make this choice. So we need to look at our body. Our body is a far more reliable barometer of the truth than our mind. And, the body is more simple. It's connected to the subconscious mind. It's more like a child or like a sleeping giant. It's simple, but powerful, incredibly powerful. And so when you feel like you're you got to check your body. If you think you're choosing love when you're actually choosing fear, you'll be going, yeah, I'm really good. Yeah, I'm feeling really good. And you'll your body language will be giving it away. But if you're really just open, relaxed, transparent, receptive, you're choosing love. Your body's telling you, I feel good. I feel open. I feel trusting. Therefore, I am choosing love in this moment. You can safely assume that you are. So we've got to check in with our bodies. And this is super important.
Yeah, I want you to stay here for a little bit, because we did touch on this before, and this has popped up with a few people that I've met along the way. It's like, how do we tell the difference between intuition and just the mind thinking? And also, you just sort of described that, which is coming into the body. And this actually leads in beautifully to something that we spoke about before, but this idea of I know many people talk about different dimensions, and there's probably speculation about how many dimensions there are and so on and so forth. But if we look at what I'm describing as the 3D, sort of a 3D density, a dense vibration, let's just call it that. And we're all energy. It's all energy. We're in an energy ocean, right? It's just what we're swimming in, an energy ocean. Everything's energy. So if we start to look at ourselves as energy beings, and we see this radical shift in awareness, or I love that, I'm going to just, again, quote, the quantum leap in awareness. So what again is required for that? Well, quantum leap in awareness for me is a completely reframe of how we engage. And then that brings up intuition, which has been a big topic for a long time. So differentiating between that would be lovely for you to talk a bit about that. And also, you mentioned before that as we move into this sort of fourth, fifth let's say, stage of consciousness, conscious awareness, and the way that we perceive ourselves and what's going on, then there's a maturity that takes place that's from this sort of immature, still the kid at school that's putting everything up to the teacher or the father and the mother, and staying at home with the mother and being lost in that sort of like, oh, dependent, oh, somebody lead me, take me, I need to be authorized, I need authority to lead me, I need leaders, somebody lead me. That is not going to cut it, because if that's what you want, you're going to just follow down the path of those that just want to lead you to wherever they want to lead you, and you're just a commodity. You're just you're actually, your energy is being what's the word when it's being sucked, Darpan, but it's being like harvested. Your energy is being harvested in that space. So I'd love you, I don't know if that's alive in you, but I'd love you to talk a bit about that. I do want to drop back to some of the other stuff you shared, because it's so rich what you've already covered. We've covered great ground. But yeah, I want to talk about that around this maturing, because when you said a moment ago, Darpan, that we say no in a clear, non-acquiescent, and I love how you described it. It's a peaceful non-acquiescence. It's not conflict,
Non-compliance.
Right? Yeah, non-compliance. Thank you. Yeah. What comes up for you from that, Darpan?
Well, there's a lot of stuff there and really juicy. But yeah, it's look, if we start giving our power away when we get a lot of people are afraid right now, so they're looking to the outside authority, they're looking to science, they're looking to the politicians, they're looking to the health minister. Please tell us what's real, tell us what to do, tell us how to deal with this. We'll go along with it because we're afraid and we don't know, and we don't really want to take responsibility. So you take the responsibility for us. This is classic old paradigm thinking. This is the way we've been living for the last several millennia, like living according to this. And of course, if you look to outside authority, excuse me, and rely upon your experience to gauge from outside opinions and realities, then you're just doomed and compelled to just play out history as it's done so many times over the last millennia. Like even with the really great revolutions that liberated the people, they ended up becoming the same as the dictators who they ousted after a period of time, because it's that same consciousness. That's what happens in the third dimensional density. That's the way it is. But what we're doing is we're actually anchoring fourth and fifth dimensional elements within this density, hence bringing heaven to earth. And this is literally what is happening right now. I know this might sound woo-woo to some people, but we're in the dark stages, the sort of in the death rebirth situation. We are in the dying. We are in the dissolution. Everything is being dissolved and recreated. And so at this point, it doesn't look like an awakening. It doesn't look like, a shift of consciousness, but this is exactly what's required for any shift in any reality. Is there's a death and there's a rebirth, particularly in the third density. You can't have one without the other. And you can't just go into an awakening without going through that dying process. So rather than bemoan it, we should just willingly work with it and just keep our head above water. Because at this stage, we're in a very fast flowing river and we don't know where it's going. All we can trust is that it's going to the sea, that it is some point going to the ocean. So keep your head above the water and just avoid all the obstacles and just keep going and let the mother take you, or let the river take you to the mother. And this is very much where we find ourselves, and the ability, and this is what is being tested, is the ability of people to surrender on that level, because that is what's being asked for. There is a death happening. There's a death of an old paradigm. And before the new can be born, it has to be completely dissolved, just like Shiva is the destroyer as well as the creator. You can't have one without the other. And as it's being imploded, it's not something to be upset about. It's just like allowing that to happen. Going with it, going with the laws of nature, of existence. It's not, freaking out. It's about reassessing, re-gauging, taking more responsibility, bringing more presence, bringing more kind of dominion into our lives, so that we become the authority within our lives. And this doesn't happen overnight. It means you've got to connect with people who are already vibrating at that level, and then in a kind of an osmosis, just as two tuning forks will start to vibrate at the same note if they're in each other's presence, or one is sound and the other one starts vibrating. This is how we transmit to each other right now, as we are right now. This will go out to a number of people. If it happens like that and there's a tuning fork being struck, even if there's just one person that this resonates with, then it's the whole exercise is already worthwhile. That's the way this process happens. It's not through, I mean, all of the other media is good too, but ultimately it's an inner revolution. It's good to be guided and to connect with others and to find conscious community or people you can relate to on that level, and to open your hearts and to really share with each other about this process, and that it's okay to go through, that we don't have to be afraid, that we just have to let go. And that even if dying happens, then better to let go into death than to go kicking and screaming. It's a completely different experience. And death is always followed by rebirth. Always, always, always. Even physical death is followed by a birth into another state.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a transition. And we are right in the middle of that transition. Or well, not even in the middle. We're just in the early stages of that transition. And that's the dark stages. That's the part that feels really kind of unsettling to people, because it brings up all kinds of emotions, all kinds of things that they haven't dared to look at because they've had their head stuck firmly in the sand like an ostrich. And then if you pull it out, you go, okay, well, and you realize that everything is falling apart, then you are forced into a situation where you have to make that choice of either taking responsibility and or go flailing and kicking down the road. And many people will, but more and more and more and more people are going to be able to step into the early stages of taking that responsibility. And it's not going to happen overnight, but it is going to happen rapidly when you look at the scale of things, you know, like it'll be in a flash, even though it might take years. It's happening very, very quickly in terms of the evolution of human consciousness on this planet. It's happening in the blink of an eyelid.
Right.
But we here right now in third dimensional density are here to just play out this whole transition. This is our job. This is why we've incarnated. This is why we're here. As I've mentioned in other shows before, we've got front row seats to the most extraordinary show ever happened for human consciousness, and certainly it's unprecedented in any of our historical process. So we're on new territory. This is like throwing us into the moment. We cannot look backwards and say, how did people deal with this before? You know, people have tried to do that with the plague and back in 1917, 18, but it's just like a little tiny fraction of what's happening. It's just one little blip of a detail. And what is happening on a larger scale is not even being controlled by those powers that be that we spoke of earlier. They are just going along and trying to take an opportunity, trying to capitalize, if you like, off this massive change that is happening on a cosmic level. And
right, and
and
Darpan,
so
can I
the
jump?
point,
I want to jump in there with that because it brings me back to the thing, and I'll tell you why. So this is a great point, right? So we talk about this maturity, we talk about this taking full responsibility for it all, and if we talk about or feel into this non-separation, so this idea of separation is also part of an illusion, right? This the ego identification tells us that I am what I own, I am what people think of me, I am separate from everybody else, and that this creates this idea, the identification of separation, right? So if we just drop in for a minute, because when we talk about these powers that be, or we speak about the billionaires, we know them. It's not even about they and them and us. The list is out there. We know who supposedly controls the government. We know who are the billionaires. We know whether it's Elon Musk,
who created
whether
the money
it's
system,
Richard Branson, who created the money system. We know that. It's not about a big conspiracy talk. We just know them. So they're out there, and they're playing with life force energy, just like everybody else. They have big visions. They have lots of money. They have military support. They can put satellites in the sky. They're like you said, they already know about the free energy and the way that systems work. Hence why we've got, internet and everything else that's going on in the space stations and so on, which is kind of far out to even grasp if you're playing as the peasants outside the castle, right? We're just going along with whatever's happening. Now, if we bring in a more unity consciousness perspective, a more equality, a more owning our power, and then seeing everything that's outside of us as a direct mirror of what is going on inside of us. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you interpret this, Darpan, but I'd love to know what comes up for you when I say that, because what's been coming up for Dara and I is this idea that everyone is literally not an idea, it's not something new, but this direct mirror. So as soon as I look at the Schwabs, or I look at the Charleses, or the Elon Musk, or the what's his name, the one that Bill Gates, if I look at them, and at times I've looked at them and I've been like, I don't trust these people. I don't trust them. It's like literally comes up in my body. Like it feels like I don't trust them. So I'm like, where don't I trust me right now? Where don't I trust that part that they're showing me inside of me? And where am I exercising that behavior inside of me and inside of my communities or around? And how can I take full responsibility of that and bring loving conscious awareness to that, so that dissolves within me and my frequency shifts? Does this make sense, what I'm saying?
Wow, Simon, that's it. On the nail, hit the nail right on the head. That's what I was working towards, and you've
Okay.
just beautifully introduced it, because that's what it's all about. It's about, I think the ones who are really awakening and are awake have had somewhere along the line this sense of oneness, whether it's come through meditation, through lovemaking, through sacred plants, through running, through dancing, whatever it is, whatever was the catalyst that induced that experience. Most people who are waking up have had that experience where they realize, fuck, all is one. Everything is one. I'm connected to everything. I'm a point of sentience, and yet that point of sentience contains it all. And I'm in it, and it is in me. In fact, I am it. And therefore, that anything that emanates from me is part, or everything I experience is actually part of myself. Everything is an extrapolation of my own consciousness. And when I say mine, I don't mean Darpan. I mean consciousness. I mean the one, the consciousness. And if you've had that experience, and once you realize, as Chief Seattle says, whatever you do to the web affects you. However you affect the web. Remember, Chief Seattle had that beautiful poem about like all
No, I
things.
don't know it. Tell me. I don't know it. No.
Oh man, look it up. Chief Seattle. He was one of the great Indian chiefs who did this poem where he talks about, I think it's called The Web of Life. You can look it up later on. And it's just a stunning poem which absolutely lays out poetically this state of consciousness that we call unity or non-dual awareness. And if you've been imbued with that experience, however that has happened, then from that point on, life changes, because up until that experience, we have thought that there are bits and pieces, and that, that the way the world works, you can pull it apart, put it back together, and this affects that. And then there's all these different regions that come together and create that. And we saw it in a sort of a machine-like way, and that we were separate from it, that we were somehow had our, were not part of that, that there was an other and there was a self. And this is the classic dual awareness. And for people to really wake up, this feeling of oneness is exactly what is the experience that is needed. And sometimes those feelings of oneness can come after an intense ordeal. That's why, Red Indians would set themselves all kinds of ordeals, like burials up to the head, or, fasting for 4 days, or being hung by hooks, mainly because they didn't have sacred plants. I mean, you had to torture the body to get into those states of consciousness. But those states of consciousness were so valued that they would do that. They would torture themselves in order to get to those experiences. Because once you have that experience, then you get what's called wisdom, not knowledge. Knowledge is something you've accumulated, reading books, other people's opinions, other ideas, concepts, beliefs, whatever, and you take them on board and you suddenly become very knowledgeable about information. Well, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about an inner experience that is anybody can experience, whether it's a child or a monk or a beggar or a pauper or a king, whoever. It's not limited to any kind of social or racial or, ethnic kind of like categorization. It is something that is universal to all beings, all human beings. And where this whole new paradigm shift is taking place is exactly in that arena, is that it's the implosion of the old dualistic system of this and that, up and down, right and wrong, good and evil, and all the attendant sort of ramifications from those polarities, into an experience of absolute dissolving into going beyond me and thou, and it's beautifully encapsulated by the Mayan saying of in Lakesh, which is I am another you, I am another yourself, I am you, you am I. And unless you've had that experience of unity consciousness, you don't really know what that means. It kind of intellectually you get it, you go, oh yeah, that's nice, it's a lovely idea. But if you've actually experienced that in Lakesh, that concept, that idea is not just an idea, it's a living experience. It's an experiential thing you can reference from inside your own experience. And most people who've had that experience, whether they're scientists or musicians or doctors or lawyers or philosophers or whatever, all of their teachings and all of their work tends to reflect that state. It comes naturally. You're not the same person once you've really, truly grokked, really understood, really felt, really leaned into and embodied that feeling. And then you are changed forever. And that doesn't mean it's there permanently all the time. It just means once you've experienced it, maybe you'll fall off the ladder and go back into 3D awareness and go back into the small wave thinking, back into, how it used to be, the old patterns. But you can never quite forget that experience. And sooner or later you have to go, woof, and you remember again, and you remember, and you know the truth. And the truth does not need to be explained or proved. It is felt, it is known, it is brahmasi. It's like, you know it. And this is the experience I'm talking about. And this is the inner revolution that is happening on the planet today. And this is what I've been devoting my whole life to, well, in the last 25, 30 years, is to try and induce those kinds of experiences in people so that at least they've tasted a sense or get a sense of their multidimensional nature, and not just that they've got this blinkered existence, which we've been taught and conditioned as the only real experience for us here in the body. And
right,
so,
Darpan. So that's beautiful. Wait there. That's lovely. Stay there. That's so beautiful. Stay there. I know we could, because I have to jump in because it's so lovely for me to bring in the. I like to put, you deliver a. You bring a lot, right? There's so much there. I hope everyone listening, you're enjoying the poetic wisdom that pours out of this being, but. So if we drop into the inner revolution, I love that. I mean, I'm all about the revolution of love, this inner revolution. And we look at like, this is a stage. And I know you said before, this is like the conscious ingression of higher frequency, right? This is like a 26,000 year cycle. But I know on the last podcast, you mentioned many different cycles all coming together at one time. So what I want us to drop into here is this inner revolution takes place, right? So as within, so without. And then we look outside. Earlier in the conversation, you said, we people out there might think they're insignificant, they're small. How can they make any real impact? How can they, well, this is what you're talking about. Actually, the response right now, the ability to respond, responsibility, is to go inside and realize that when you access that inner revolution, when you tap into that unity consciousness, you are the dreamer of the, you're the dream maker of the dream. You're the one that's actually impacting collective consciousness. So you, in that moment, have taken responsibility of how you want to see the world unfolding, right? That's one thing. And then what's also beautiful is, rather than look out and go, oh, it's all drab, it's all dystopian, it's all going, whatever it's going, I don't know how you see it, Darpan, but I see that those that have chosen to open or that are awakening to this, what we're talking about today, then do you see it as like there's that soaring ripple effect of awakening that's really unfolding right now, and that density, that sort of, inequality, that in the aspect of the shadow or the fear that doesn't want to include, that's scared of death, that's worried about ownership and what is it? I'm going to just reference this again, just for the domination, the exploitation. Are we going to literally see that has to dissolve because it can't hold up anymore? It can't stick, and that we're going to move into this more you know, how would we describe it? This planetary transition into, you know, again, what we call it, a new earth, loving kindness, consciousness, empathy, joy, exuberance, co-creation. I just get, anyway, jump in there.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, it is a personal revolution, and it's not a matter of like it's going to just woof happen. It's like it's a wake up call for humanity. It's going to happen in a very tumultuous, but you know, as existence stands, it's not unkind or cruel. Even when a tsunami wipes out 300,000 people, it's not nature being cruel. It's just nature knowing that death doesn't exist, and it's just done that as part of the processes of birth, death, and transitioning on this planet. It's happening all the time in the cosmos. Planets are being born and died and explode every moment. It's not like it's a sentimental event for existence. It's just part of the play and dance of life. And so if it is that, you know, say, you know, millions or even billions of people die, then, you know, who can say if that's a good or a bad thing? I mean, at the moment, the planet is overpopulated. I just really resent people like Bill Gates and other oligarchs who decided they have the authority to start their eugenics programs and play God, when existence knows exactly very well how to redress imbalances. When I was a kid, there was a big plague of locusts that happened in where I grew up, and it was just like crazy everywhere. And then there was just all these birds that migrated in that started to eat all the locusts. So nature always has its redressing ability to bring balance. So what we're going into today is a sorting out by frequency.
I don't, one thing though, before you jump into this, and what you just said about Bill Gates and the eugenics program, and this idea that these individuals can take the power into their hands and wipe out species, right? So just as you were saying that, it popped up. So can we not see? Is there not a way to see him as existence, even though we may not like him? And can we not see him as existence, as he's actually playing that role?
He is. That's exactly what's happening. We've got to thank Bill Gates. He's playing that role. Exactly. I used to think that, look, when I was an angry young man at university and I was anti-apartheid, anti-Vietnam and anti-everything, if somebody had given me a gun and I was near Richard Nixon, I would have probably shot him. You know what I mean? I thought he was such an evil man, you know, like bombing all these young children in Vietnam and blah, 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 blah. But I wouldn't take that approach today. In fact, when George Bush was bombing Iraq, rather than taking that position, I was actually sending love to George Bush, because they're playing a very, very important role, as you rightly say. Like if you look at the crucible of consciousness, the alchemical crucible of the transformation of consciousness, if you want to look at this like as an alchemist for a moment, then what you need in order to affect that radical shift, that change, that quantum leap in consciousness, like changing lead into gold, you need to exert a lot of pressure, a lot of heat, cold, pressure. Look how long it takes to create a diamond from carbon. It's millions of years of pressure and heat and cold and all kinds of elements. You can't say that it's really bad, that heat is good and cold is bad or anything like that when you look at the bigger picture. So in this case, the compression of human consciousness that is happening right now is important. It's an essential step for the next to be able to happen. And so everybody has their role to play. And I like to use the term, the devil knows not for whom he works. So even people who seem to be having nefarious service to self intentions are playing an absolutely important role, because the shift in consciousness simply wouldn't happen unless these elements were present, because people were far too asleep. People don't want to shift their consciousness just because they're happy being asleep. Do you know what I mean? I remember one of my teachers once saying, you know, being a teacher of consciousness is a very, very difficult thing and thankless task. He said, because it's like being in a house of people and they're all just living in the house and they have no idea that there's a world outside. And the teacher keeps going, hey, there's a world outside. There's a world outside. Look, there's trees and sun and grass. And like, bullshit. Yeah, no. Another one of your stories. Yeah. No, this is real. This is where we are. And so then the teacher goes out in despair, and then he comes back in the room and goes, everybody, the house is on fire. Get the fuck out of the house. It's on fire. So everybody runs out of the fucking house and they go, wow, look at this. Look at the trees. Look at the grass. Wow, look at the sun. So in other words, we need sometimes all kinds of devices to wake up. And because otherwise we just like to remain asleep. It's a kind of a, it's a trance in itself. And so these people who have these agendas are at playing an absolutely important role. Couldn't happen in any other way. This is the greatest polarization of the light and the dark in our historical process. It's really coming to a peak now. And this polarization is not there to try and defeat each other or neutralize each other. It's the energy of that is going to push us, propel us into something which bridges that polarity gap into unity consciousness, into non-dual awareness, into experiences that we were speaking of earlier, where we know that we are connected to all things and that all is one. Even though you're separate and I'm looking at you in a Zoom call somewhere else in the world, we are one at essence. It's like if you had a piece of paper and put 4 holes in it and you just put, saw my fingers there, you'd think they look separate, but then you take it away and of course the whole palm is there. So in a certain sense, we're being blocked by this illusion of this piece of paper that makes it look like this dimension is the only one that's there.
So
and therefore we can't. That's the veil. And these veils are being lifted at this time. And that's why it's really crazy, why people are feeling really uncertain, because as these veils get lifted, people start to not know what's solid anymore. They can't believe in religion anymore. They know the politicians all lie, but still go along with it. They know that the system is corrupt. They know that, the whole medical system is they know many things, but rather than look at that, they will accept it, because in order to look at it, if they even look at one thing, then they have to look at everything. And this is what people are afraid of, because if you take responsibility for one thing, then you've got to naturally take responsibility for it all. And better and easier not to take responsibility for any of it and just tell me how it is, and then I'll appropriately react and abreact according to that. And that's called a place of disempowerment. That's called a place of acquiescence. It's called a place of diminishing oneself to a very low level of vibration of frequency. And that's served us up until now. In a certain sense, we've been kids in our nappies, growing up through our evolutionary process. And now it's time to take the nappies off, to take responsibility for our own backyard and not shit in it everywhere just because we want someone else to clean it up, maybe our children or the children's children. And just take responsibility as being conscious custodians of this incredibly beautiful jewel flung somewhere in the far reaches of the Milky Way. Like it's this incredible denizen of life that is actually going through an immense change. And the change is not just in us human beings, it is happening to the whole planet itself. It's like Gaia is going through puberty. You remember what it was like in puberty when we all got our emotions got all churned up and we didn't believe our parents anymore, and trying to desperately find a new sense of identity who could relate to the world and from not the child anymore, but not really knowing where it is, and getting upset and very, very sensitive, and pimples come out in your skin and all kinds of emotions. Well, if you look at the planet, isn't the planet going through that now, like collectively? I mean, look, what's weather? Weather is emotions. What's everybody talking about? Climate change. It's all about weather. It's about the emotional nature coming up. What's the pimples? It's like volcanoes are going off everywhere at the moment. If you actually go on the volcano page, it's ridiculous. They don't even get reported anymore. So many are going off. And there are all kinds of changes in the world's electromagnetic systems. There are changes in the even to the Gulf Stream, and like the basic veins and body of Gaia is going through a major transformation. So we as humans, being as arrogant as we are, think it's all about us. We think we've got to save the planet. We're the cause of this and or whatever, due to human. This is just arrogance. This is still the consciousness that sees itself separate from everything else. When you really look to come down to it, we are just walking, talking, cogitating aspects of that one entity called Gaia. And Gaia is going through a massive shift. She's moving through a few dimensions, as happens to planets every now and then, because planets are beings, just as suns are beings. And this is all being orchestrated by the sun. And that's where the climate change people are really fall down, because there's a whole heap of scientists now who've signed petitions saying, not due to human hydrocarbon emissions. Sure, there might be some little blip about that, But why is Mars warming up? Why is Venus warming up? Why is Mercury warming up? These don't have humans on them, and yet Mars, the polar caps are melting.
Right.
Why? What's in the common? The sun. The sun is the common factor. So the sun is going through changes, and they've had these massive telescopes on the sun for the last 15 years because they know something major is happening with the sun. And as the sun changes its cycles and changes its electromagnetic field, as it does from time to time, so the Earth is being triggered by the sun, as are all the other concubines of the sun, the other planets. And it's the alpha male going, this is what's happening and shifting. And the sun is the source. That's why the Egyptians and the Aztecs and so many of them look to the sun, because it is the source of life. It is light. It is the source of light. No planet could exist without it. And so it's the one that orchestrates these changes. So there are much bigger movements afoot. And this is what I was pointing out in our last interview when I was saying there are several cosmic cycles all coming to a point of synchronicity around this period that we're living right now. And that's why so many major changes. And we can look at these oligarchs and think, oh, it's because of them, they're wielding power. No, they're trying to hedge and position themselves to deal with the same kind of energies in their own way, except they're trying to maximize it still in the old paradigm for service to self. But this is doomed to failure. I don't care if they own all the money in the world, or manufacture it, or the armies, or whatever power they accumulate, because this consciousness shift is nothing to do with that. And just as an addendum to that, I'd like to share this experience I saw with this program called Project Camelot. I don't know if you know about that, but it's a place where they have all kinds of whistleblowers and very, very erudite and very good people. And there was this one, you know how the CIA have been doing remote viewing as well as the MK Ultra and all the rest of it. Remote viewing they've been into for a long, long time. And I've known a number of remote viewers who've worked for the government in that way. Anyway, there's this one really, really shit hot, top-notch remote viewer who the CIA and perhaps some of those people, those oligarchs, got together and they wanted him to go into the timeline of the future to see from a remote viewing point of view what plays out. And he went in there according to their instructions and went in there and came back, and he just had this beautiful look on his face. And he said, wow. He said, I just see this great awakening of people. People are waking up and just shining and taking, owning who they truly are. And they went, right, that wasn't what they wanted to hear. Oh, shit. What about if we do this, and this? Now go in there and see what's up. No kidding. They asked him to do it. So he went in there and with those conditions and parameters, and he just came back again saying, it happened differently, but this great awakening happened. This incredible great awakening. I said, well, what about if we do this? And so that's kind of the game they're playing. It's desperate. It's a desperate game to hang on to power when it is the very power that is dissolving or reorientating or repositioning. So it's not about personal power anymore. It's about universal oneness, a collective power. It's about power from a place to service to the one and all, service to the one, which is a completely different expression of power when it's in service to self.
Right.
So anyway, just to finish that story, this guy, this story, him relating that story was a very good allegory or a kind of a metaphor for what I feel energetically is going down on the bigger picture. Although most people who are caught in the trance of the mainstream media wouldn't even be thinking on those levels or seeing them, but they are. That doesn't mean they're not there. And that's why I bring myself back to the sun. I think that the sun is like a major orchestrator of what happens in this solar system. And these beings who are rolling out this agenda are just playing with the same astrological influences as those who are in the power to service to the one and all. So there's this final, I don't like to use the word battleground because it's a communion into one, but there's the drawing out within 3D of the light and the dark. And it's not about will the light win, will the dark win. It's about bridging that into one reality. So the shadow is accepted and integrated into one. It's no longer polarized, projected, or kind of, like extrapolated outwards onto someone else or some other thing. And once somebody has had truly had that deep experience in themselves for their own, on their own authority, their own experience of that sense of oneness, then you could no harm hurt someone or try and take advantage of somebody or cause them any kind of like ill or feeling or anything than you would do to yourself, because you know that everything is an extrapolation of your own consciousness. And if there's something there that you don't like, then as you so beautifully expressed earlier, and I think that process you spoke about is so valuable, and people should take that home, that kind of idea, is you just use whatever seems to be abrasive in the outside screen of your experience to just bring that in and see where that is reflected within oneself. And if you can just tweak the software within you, then suddenly presto levace, it all changes on the outside, rather than tinkering with the nuts and bolts of a perceived outside reality, which is arduous and ultimately futile.
Right, beautiful.
Yeah, so this is what I mean about the inner revolution. Yeah,
yeah, but
and it is a one thing. It's happening on all levels. Yeah.
Yeah, it's lovely,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's so rich, so rich. I mean, yeah, we can just start to laugh because this is the play. Actually, what I'm hearing as you speak is the play of existence. So
it's the play.
Recapping.
It's the leela.
Yeah, it's the leela, and recapping on some of what you shared. I love the analogy which I've used before as well, and maybe some of the listeners are aware of this too, but the body, you know, how we see the body as the outer too. So when you spoke about, you know, the Gaia's veins and the arteries being the rivers and the streams, and you know, the volcanoes being the eruptions of what's happening within us, and the emotions that's going on and so on. It's like when we actually see that interconnectedness of the micro, the macro, and we realize that the soil itself is the skin of our being, and if we continue to pollute ourselves, which we are doing, that's really how you can see what's happening on the outside world, because of how we're polluting ourselves. And then you look at the outer world, it's giving you a huge mirror. It's saying, look how the soil's being treated, look how the interaction of our species, look how we communicate with one another, look how we show up and judge and condemn. If we see that and go, wow, that's inside me, let me purify that, let me refine that, let me take full responsibility, let me come back to self-empowerment and find that inner peace. I'm just loving this conversation again, because it's highlighting that that's where we have power. That's where we have the sovereignty to, yes, that's where we come empowered. That's why I'm feeling empowered as always, just listening to you. But it links in actually so beautifully to something I listened yesterday. And by the way, I love the story from the Project Camelot that the awakening is inevitable anyway, so just relax, right? That's the first thing. The other thing, the other thing was self-care, Darpan, coming up there, where how can we, if we're not going to come back right now, what can we do right now? We can take care of ourselves. We can love ourselves. We can see this beautiful opportunity right now and rise up as into everything we've spoken about for the last hour. But I don't know what comes up for you now, but this is very much
that is gold.
Yeah.
Simon, that's it. That's beautiful. That's the cherry on the cake, because I tell you, self-love is what is going to create this inner revolution. And as we come to realize that a lot of what that we perceived as reality as an illusion is actually a manufactured illusion through our conditioning process, and that as we come back to our original face by consciously stopping to give energy to that which we know is actually not serving myself or any of the community, and then having the courage to actually just stand in our truth and be transparent. And this is a very powerful word. I'm so happy you use this word a lot. And, you know, in transparency and honesty, that's all, you know, it's like showing up. And in showing up and allowing ourselves to be seen, that in itself is an act of love, but to nourish and to care for ourselves, because we've been taught to put ourselves last. And, you know, the one I've been working with, you know, counseling and therapy for, 40 years. And the one constant thing that you face all the time, I'd say 95% of most people's issues stem down to self-worth. Right. All comes down to where you don't love yourself, where you're putting yourself down, where you're judging yourself.
Not enough.
And these are all old voices that come back from the past, whether it's our parents or our teachers or the system or the policeman or the magistrate, whoever. And and we've taken on these characters inside of our own head, and now we're our own policemen. We're our own guards. We're our own, we're in the jail, and we're also the jailer. This is the
Right.
diabolical trick of what happens with ego imprisonment. But when you liberate yourself from that ego imprisonment by being aware that I am all, I am it. And when I'm saying that, I'm not big noting going, I'm great, I'm fantastic. I'm just simply saying all is connected, all is one. And that same animating force that animates the tree or the flower or the goanna is animating me too. And in that sense, we all share this one immanent living force, which we call
Yes.
life. And
Yes.
and as we embrace that, it gives us power. It makes us feel worthwhile. It is immediately validating. And this is what, to get out of self-worth, one needs to find validation. That's why so many people are coming together in circles all over the planet. I mean, you never read about this in the mainstream news, but all over the planet, there are people coming together and also connecting and validating each other in their new perceptions and their new awareness of what could be
Really
called
key.
reality.
That's really key. That's really key. I love that. Let's just highlight that. Let's stop and pause there for one moment, because that's beautiful. I love it. I've written it down. We validate each other in that new perception of who we truly are. That is that's juicy for me. And because, we hear a lot of talk about self-love and so on, but how you just broke that down is where you don't see that in the news. You imagine if everybody stood up right now and the ones in the mainstream said, right, so what we're going to do, we're just going to love ourselves more today. What's your personal practice to love yourself? Don't worry about needing to go to work. We've got the energy system sorted out with the free energy. Now we're going to focus on coming together, collaborating, and boosting each other up into the magnificent divine beings that we know ourselves to be. Anyway.
This is how, when this happens, when we come to that stage, the world will be transformed into a place of such abundance. It's happening now. That's right. It is. And that's the experience of it. But the abundance beyond our wildest beliefs and imaginings can become the norm when we open up to our multidimensional nature and our innate creativity and our ability to create reality moment by moment. And if we're aware that we're doing that, then of course we're going to make the best choices. Because what kind of a reality do we want to manifest? Let's look at that. You mean I could really manifest a reality that I could imagine and feel and want and embody? Yes. The exciting answer is yes, you can. And of course, that's a question nobody would have dared to really think about, because it seemed that reality was all out there. And who am I, this little tiny little creature amongst, So this is what's changing. It's the perspective. It's a new perspective. It's a re-identification from the small I to the larger I. Some people call it your higher self. Some people call it, the divine, the celestial, whatever you want to call it. I call it non-dual awareness. I call it the grid of consciousness. It's the unity field of unity consciousness. And this is a good way I find to explain it. And then once you identify yourself as that, you immediately open the conduit for much, 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 much more breadth and spectrum of experience than what we've previously been experiencing. It's literally like getting out of jail. It's literally like that metaphor of the people who are living in the house or in Plato's cave, and they finally get tricked into going outside and going, wow, it's that kind of awakening. It's on that kind of scale. And it's a sorting by frequency, because on the planet today, as I said, we have this polarization, and some will will opt not to go there. Some will, go, I don't really want to go for this new, I'm just playing it out in words. It wouldn't be so much in words, but by energy. I don't want to be a part of this new world. So they will simply, leave the planet and find another school, as this planet has been, another planet where one can explore duality and learn and grow. But many, there's a significant proportion of humanity who are ready to make that quantum leap beyond the dual awareness into non-dual awareness. That
Beautiful.
doesn't mean you're not still in 3D reality. It just means your identity is no longer in 3D reality. You realize that I am God. That's what Jesus meant. And what all the great ones have said when, when they say Abrahamsa, it means I am God. I am it. It is I. It doesn't mean they're big noting themselves. They're identifying with a much larger
Yes.
a source of energy than the previous one, which is just limited to the little I, to who I think I am, and all the ideas and prejudices and beliefs that I carry that I think is me.
Yes.
So it's really that kind of a leap. And it is a sorting by frequency. Some souls will choose not to, and they will be channeled into another 3D karmic life education school, as Gaia has been. But Gaia herself is going through this shift, and it will be reflected. And I always say that, earlier I said the devil knows not for whom he works. All these people that are putting all these grids in place, the 5G, everything else. And if you're thinking about 5G, these people are really smart. They're not just third dimensional adepts in terms of money and power and wealth. They're also fourth dimensional adepts, as in magicians. They know how to work the fourth dimension, but the fourth dimension is still dualistic, as this one is, just a lot not dense as this one. But you still have all the lords of light and all the lords of darkness and everything in between. And these people are masters of that dimension too. But they do know nothing of the fifth dimensional frequency, because that is the frequency of non-dual awareness. And for them to go into that frequency, they would have to let go of that service to self
Exactly.
mentality. And because they're
Exactly.
unwilling to do that, they hover between the third and fourth dimensions, and they feed from the fourth dimension. That's where they get their energy from. But as we're going straight through to the fifth, we'll pass through fourth dimensional densities, and we already are in our collective experience. But when we arrive at this finite experience, and I don't know how it's going to come, because I don't know how it will all play out. But what I do know, and I know from my own experience, is that it will, when it happens for one, it happens for all. It's like they say, when one person becomes enlightened, the whole world becomes enlightened. I mean, what that means is that it is coming as a collective experience, but within that we
Yes.
will have our individual perceptions and direct experiences of that thing. And those who are incongruent with that new frequency will simply leave the planet. They'll
Yes.
die one way or another and be reincarnated somewhere else. And those who are ready will move through it. And there may be, well, I mean, after Atlantis, there was great cataclysms, because I believe that in Atlantis they came to this same crux. There was a possibility to make that leap then, but it all went back to the Stone Age. And there's no guarantee that we'll make the leap this time either, except in my world, it is definitely happening. And that means that as you embody that, then your experience can have no other alternative but to manifest what it is you truly experience. So this is a great invitation and a challenge to trust, not only in existence, but into oneself. And when I say oneself, I don't mean the Darpan, the 3D entity. I mean, trust oneself as a sovereign being connected to the one and all, connected to that fifth dimensional awareness. In other words, where the higher self and the smaller self merge and they fall into line and they come into and this is how it will happen. And it's not that people have to learn some technique or where's a guidebook, how can I do this. It's not about that. That's an old 3D way of looking at it. It's just simply declaring that you are up for that I choose love. I choose love. I don't know how it's going to happen. I don't know how it's going to take place, but I choose love. And by that, I mean to say, I choose to take responsibility. I choose to open myself. I choose to live my truth. I was just going to say that what it really means to live your truth is to just have the courage to look inside and to really question everything. Question authority, question anything anybody tells you, and see how that feels inside, and not to just take willy-nilly whatever is being presented towards you, because this is a time of, we're in the hall of mirrors, we're in chapel perilous. It's very, very tricky. It's like passing through the moon. It's like things look shadowy and not real, and what's true and what's not true. And
But I'm loving this thing, Darpan, and I don't know if you've seen this in your communities or you've heard people speaking about it, about this reformation of community living and coming together in communities, whether that be off-grid communities or local communities, and actually regrouping with all that really means anything to us, which is connection, you know, supporting each other, sharing resources, sharing our gifts, and actually moving beyond all this, you know, necessarily need for, you know, vast amounts of money and competition and selling and products and so on and so forth. But how can we come together in community, live off the land, get our hands in the soil and come together? So I'd love like us to maybe, if that feels aligned to you, unless there's anything you wanted to add on, maybe we could round up the talk in that. Does that feel, you have something to say on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm right with you there. What came through already a long time ago, and what I've been doing for many years, and I see so many other people doing the same thing, is creating what I call conscious community, coming together in circle. It doesn't matter how it is, what it's for, it's for singing or meditation or sacred plants, or just simply to be in circle and to hold space and to bring, or even to eat together in circle, whatever it is, but coming together and celebrating that circle, because in a circle there is no hierarchy. It's not like a pyramid. It's all is connected as one. And if you extrapolate that out into other dimensions, it becomes a sphere, and a sphere of consciousness. So we're talking about spherical kind of patterns as opposed to pyramidical patterns, which has been the key for the last few thousand years. But it's just passing its use by date. So people all over the world are coming together to reaffirm those values that are fifth dimensional, which is connection, which is love, nourishment, nurturing, peace, love, joy, sharing, all the things. You don't need to know Quran or the sutras or Bible or all these other archaic sacred writings and therefore just develop all kinds of beliefs around them. No, any child can understand this fifth dimensional frequency. It's an experience. It's not a knowledge. It's, in fact, it's achieved by unburdening yourself of knowledge, dropping all exoteric knowledge and reconnecting to that wisdom within, to that source within, to that place of knowing within, so that each person can become their own authority. Because if you truly stop asking outside authority and bring it in, you'll be surprised about what just comes up in your own consciousness. If you truly and just simply and innocently ask those questions of yourself as opposed to the experts. It's amazing how the wisdom that people carry, but they never really explore because they're busy giving their power away to other people, particularly politicians and priests. And I call the priests and politicians the unholy mafia of the mind. They're the ones who kept this stranglehold on consciousness. And so like, it's about unplugging from that. And it's not a violent act. It's not an angry act. It's not an external revolutionary act. It's just unplugging from the external authority and reconnecting to within. And the way we do that most efficiently and beautifully and with the most amount of love and joy is to come together in circle, is to come together in community. And not just a community that hangs out and supports each other on physical levels, as communities have done in the past, but who support each other on all kinds of other frequencies as well, and particularly on the levels of spiritual levels. It's because most of community came together for, you know, physical convenience, supporting each other, helping each other, ward off the lions, ward off the enemy or whatever. But I'm talking about coming together out of love, out of a place of the heart. We're entering into a new ray. And this ray is the ray of the heart, and the heart is the place of non-dual awareness. And the heart can embrace all things, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything. It can embrace it all, and it doesn't feel the need to fix or change anything. It can just sit there with love and simply be with whatever it is that is happening. And that is the birth of compassion. So you're not trying to judge if something is good or bad. You simply accept. And you validate and you embrace what is. And when somebody in a circle, when people in a circle truly feel that spirit present, it's incredible the magic that happens, as I'm sure you've discovered in your own experiences. It's amazing that the transformations that can occur in that kind of a psychic environment. It's amazing what can unfold and what people are capable of and what they can uncover within themselves. It's incredible to watch people open up in that way. It's just a joy. And, you know, I'm very grateful that I am, financially rewarded for what I do around the planet, and that it greases the wheels of my existence. But by far and beyond, the greatest joy is watching the flowers bloom, is really watching when somebody really gets that and then gives themselves permission to open and gives themselves permission to love and to go beyond fear and to go beyond, the kind of considerations that keep us in a narrow state of consciousness. So this is how it's done. And I call that conscious community, coming together in conscious community where we absolutely embrace and fully embody those principles with each other. And again, that's where we give each other strength. As I said earlier, it's not a person, although the revolution is inside, it is shared immediately through the heart with all like-minded beings, with all people on the same frequency. You immediately enter into the same pool of consciousness. And that is just so healing in itself, to belong, to finally find your place, to finally feel where you're validated and you have a purpose, and your worth is fully accepted. This is the healing that the human consciousness is crying out for, because we've been distorted and compressed into shapes that are not natural to us, and we've been limited to only certain frequencies and certain states of consciousness which were necessary for survival, but not much else. And so we're growing beyond that. We're growing up, and it's a beautiful thing. It's a good thing to celebrate and a good thing to come together and the more we speak about it, as we do now, the more we bring that in. Right now, this is an invocation for that energy to want to take place. Right now, there is no time. It's now. Now is the time. And so in doing so, creating conscious community is like so powerful. And especially when it's completely devoted to the one and all, to the service to all beings.
Yes.
Because that's the same way they get the Club of Rome or the Trilateral.
Right. No, but actually that's lovely to finish on, because I tell you why. Sorry to just jump in. I know we have a slight lag on the sound, but I'm hoping that we've got everything that you just said in that last bit. There was a little bit of freezing and so on, but I'm hoping it's all there. But I know we're recording as well, so that's perfect. Is what you just said there, this conscious community, I think it takes us back, just in summary, to the very beginning when we spoke about some of the powers that be, let's call it, and the people that are making decisions based on what they think the collective needs. But it doesn't feel that they're making the decisions based on, from the space that we're talking about today, from that loving, inclusive space. Because if they were, the communication and the way that it would be conducting would show up very differently. So what I'm loving is neither right nor wrong, good or bad. What I'm seeing again in the self-empowerment is that conscious community is actually the response, the taking the responsibility of saying, no, actually, this is how love lives. This is how we co-inhabit. This is how we co-create. This is how we coexist. It doesn't need all these other controlling, dominating ways. We no longer need them. And we've said it all today, but it just felt like we went full circle from how we started to actually these are the solutions. And that's really what I want to bring to people listening on these conversations, Darpan, is that, well, I say at the beginning, awakening the heart of humanity. And I think today, through this little dance that you and I have been on, this play, as we like to call it, we've given some, broader perspectives. We've looked at the bigger perspective from many different viewpoints, standpoints, and we've brought it down into how we can take the responsibility and the power for each of the individuals. This is the solutions. So if you want solutions, the solution is to go within. And that feels really pertinent. I don't know if there's anything you want to just, encapsulate on the last, just to that piece of anybody listening. But I know we've done some definite.
Thank you so much, Simon. Gorgeous. You pretty much summed it all up there. But yeah, I just want to reiterate that again. It's about unplugging from the outside and connecting within, and then from that place within to reconnect on the outside through the heart with others. So it's about unplugging from that which is no longer serving and that which is past its use by date. And then having that internal, taking that responsibility, taking full responsibility, and bringing that place of innocence. In other words, dropping all knowledge, what you thought you knew and what was real and what was not real, and just reconnecting to that source of fifth dimensional energy, which is pure love, which is love and non-dual awareness. And that doesn't mean you can't feel bad within that. It means love is the frequency that you're experiencing everything within. And even if you're going through a hard time from that place, it's called compassion. You don't try and change it, you experience it as you say, a reflection of whatever is within. And then to share that, that's the really important part, to share, and to connect with others and to validate each other and to re-establish a new frequency of a more, as you said, a morphogenetic field, a Buddha field, if you like, of energy. And this is the healing. This is the healing. You don't need to do lots of therapy and go and do primal screaming and make up with your mom or your dad. Once you have that transcendent experience and you are connected with the one and all, with the, you know, and you do experience and other people as an extension of yourself, or as being inspired or you know, animated by the same source, then that is healing in itself. That experience is so ultimately healing, and will, it by its own insight and perception, iron out any little remaining dysfunctional aspects that might still be there, that you might be carrying. It just, but that one experience of being connected is the healing experience.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
So anyway, thank
Deep
you,
breath.
Simon, for again inviting me onto your show, and to yo.
Well, God, like,
And
you know,
it's always
like
a joy to be with you. And
yes. Go on, carry on.
yeah. No. That was it. I just wanted to say that. Yeah. No, thank you. Because I know you're wanting to wrap it up now. We could go on forever because there's so many other aspects you can go into more detail. But thank you, because I feel like since our last connection, we went deeper into it this time, and it was more to do with solutions, practical things we can do, attitudes we can embody, and to just bring them into a daily practice, you know, like something that can be relevant to each and every individual, not just as a generalization for humanity at large. Because we all do need to come to that point, as I said, choosing that choice, whether we choose to stay with the old way that we were and therefore go through all of the drama that will ensue, or whether we open up to something that is completely unknown and that is wanting to be birthed within us, and that we need to surrender to, and we need to be very innocent with. And when I say innocent, not bring too much of the mind stuff, just bring the inner wisdom, which always knows. And if you trust that intuition, you'll always be led in the right way. And if you can let go enough, you will just enter into the flow of synchronicity, where the right thing will happen at the right time. But let's keep that for another transmission, because there's a whole wealth of stuff just within that, the flow of synchronicity, and how to dance with this, not just embody and birth it in us, but how to dance with it, how to have fun with it, how to become a multidimensional creator, create a being, create a spirit.
I really love that you just
this
brought this up.
This is what awaits us in this new paradigm.
But let's actually, I will remember this because we've recorded it, of course, but let's keep that as a topic to kick off with on the next call, because for everybody listening, for everybody listening, I've said to Darpan that I'd like to keep this thread of conversations going as we navigate, because let's be real, this is not just about, next week everything's going to be so-called resolved. This is about how we continue to transition through this beautiful time that we're alive. So thank you everybody for tuning in. It's been an epic journey again with Darpan. I could sit and listen to him all day, and as you can see, we've just covered so much. So please, if you've joined us this far, thank you for being with us. Have a magnificent day, and please take the medicine in whichever way it feels for you. Go and sit in silence. Go and walk in nature, go and take a hot bath, whatever feels the way of integrating what we've shared today. Let it sink, and it will permeate in your being for the days to come. So just allow it to be in your present awareness. Take care. Many blessings. Lots of love. Mwah. Ciao.
Thank you, brother. Yay. Awesome. Bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Simon Transparently. This podcast is a call to action, a call into sovereignty, a call to speak our truth and love ourselves fiercely, and for us all to rise up together as love. If you are resonating with my offerings, you can support me by becoming a patron, for which I would be deeply grateful. And you can access more of my content at simontransparently.com. You can also join our online community at thebelovedtribe.com. This is where we get to be a little bit more intimate, share our gifts, and practice what it means to be love.
This is our time to rise.